Okay, today we're going to be discussing unemployment. This is kind of a hot topic usually during the times of elections, and it's always discussed at least once at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month. So these statistics, the unemployment statistics, are produced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The way that they get the statistics is by one way is the old school way, which is by contacting people by landline phones. They contact them once a month, um, and they to get the unemployment status, and they try to get up to 60,000 participants each month to kind of get a good feel of the employment environment for people. And the statistics are based off of the adult population. And for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they consider anyone between at the age of 16 to be an adult. So anyone over the age of 16 and over, those are the people that they're using, or the ages that they're using to calculate the statistics. When we think of employment and unemployment, there are three groups that are broken down in the unemployment rate. The first group is the employed group. Now, these are the people who are paid employees, or they own their own business, or they could be unpaid workers in a family business. The employed are also either full-time, meaning that they work 32 hours or over 32 hours, or part-time, anybody working under 32 hours. And they also have temporarily absence. So their absence isn't due to work loss, but it could be due to going on a vacation, illness, or through bad weather. The second group are the unemployed. Now, these people are those who are not employed, and they've been unemployed for at least 4 weeks. The difference between the unemployed and the next group that we'll discuss is that they're available for work, and they're also in the market, the work market, to try to find a job. The third group are the people that are not in the labor force anymore. These are the people that have been unemployed for over 4 weeks, and they have given up looking for a job. They're not even looking for a job to be employed. The not in labor force also includes students, whether they're part-time or full-time students, homemakers, and retirees. And it also includes a group of people who are discouraged, or discouraged workers, who these are the people that want to work, but they just stop looking for a job. Now, if we look at this chart, this is a breakdown of the population in January 2016. The groups that you see on here, you'll see a labor force, adult population, and the way to break down what the labor force is, that's the total number of workers. This includes the people that are employed. So you see 150.5 million employed. And then you have the unemployed, which is 7.8 million. The adult population, remember, that reflects people who are at least 16 years old. The whole population, adult population, would be 252.4 million. Now, by looking at the labor force, we can come up with the unemployment rate. So I'll just call the unemployment rate the U rate. We can also come up with the labor force participation rate. So labor force participation rate. I can't spell. Rate. The unemployment rate is equal. My pen's not working. The unemployment rate is equal to the number of unemployed divided by the number of employed plus the number of unemployed, and multiply that number by 100. So for this example, for this chart, the unemployment rate would be the number of unemployed. So that would be 7.8 divided by 150.7.8. So what we need to find out is, well, we actually already have that number, but I'm still going to put it in the calculator. We need to find out what the labor force is, because that's what the number of employed plus the number of unemployed is. We have it listed here, but I'm just going to do it on the calculator just so you can see how to do it. So it's 150.5 plus 7.8, and that gives you 158.3. So you see the total labor force is 158.3 million. And to come up with the unemployment rate, we're just going to do 7.8 divided by 158.3. So our unemployment rate based off of this 2016 breakdown is 4.9%. So to come up with the labor force participation rate, that's equal to the labor force divided by the adult population, and we multiply all of that by 100. So we take 158.3 million, which is the labor force, and we divide that by the adult population, which is 252,000.4 million. So I'm getting these numbers from this chart again. So labor force is here, adult population is here. We divide all of that, and then we multiply that by 100. So let's go in here and clear that out. And again, we're going to do 158.3 divided by 252.4 equals, and then we'll multiply that times 100. So the labor force participation rate would be 62.7%. So again, here's a little explanation about what we just did with the numbers on the previous slide. We found out what the labor force was. That's the number of employed plus the number of unemployed, and by finding that out, we were able to come up with the unemployment rate, which is equal to the number of unemployed people divided by the labor force, which the labor force is equal to the number of employed plus the number of unemployed, and then we multiplied all of that by 100. And then on this slide, again, this is the same thing that we did in slide 5, where we came up with the labor force participation rate. We just took the total labor force and divided that by the adult population, and then we multiplied that by 100. So looking at this table here, this is the labor market of various demographic groups. So as you can see, it's broken down by gender and by race, and it just basically has white or black. And then it's broken down by age groups as well. So you can see the white male ages 25 to 54, their unemployment rate was 4.4%, and this was taken from figures from 2014, and then the labor force participation rate was 89.4. You compare that with all of the other adult groups, you see they have the highest level of labor participation rate and the lowest unemployment rate. And you can just look through here. I'm not going to go over all of the numbers, but you can see that for the adult population. Now, it also breaks it down to teenagers, and they consider teenagers, although the BLS considers everyone over 16 years old. To break it down for this demographic table, they list people from 16 and 19 as teenagers. So you can see that their numbers, all of their numbers across the board, are lower than the adults. And the reason for that this group, the teenager group, is a lot higher as far as unemployment rate and lower for labor force participation rate, is because most teenagers and most people between the ages of 16 and 19, they have school, they're in school, they have school activities, so they're not as stable in the labor force as, say, someone who's an adult who's 25 to 54. Some companies use this as a reason why not to hire younger groups, because they're not as stable and they don't have the stability as the people between 25 and 54. This group, again, they are either in school, participating in school activities, or if their family moves a lot, they have to move with their family. So that would explain these numbers here and these numbers here compared to the numbers for 25 to 54. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the BLS.gov website so we can kind of see where these numbers come from. When you hear them on the TV or on a radio program, they may say the unemployment rate is this for non-farm jobs, or if you look at this group compared to this group. I'm going to show you how to get those numbers, how they come up with those numbers, and where they are. So if we go out to the internet and go to bls.gov, okay, from here we're going to go to economic release, go down to employment and unemployment. And we're going to just concentrate on the monthly employment situation. So you have three options here. The first one is the HTML or the website for the employment situation. And if we go to employment situation summary, and you can see that this is the employment situation for February 2021. You see the total non-farm payroll employment rose by 379,000 in February. The unemployment rate was 6.2%. Remember how we calculated the unemployment rate on the slides before, where we took the unemployment rate, or the number of employed plus the number of unemployed, which gave us the labor force, and then we took the number of unemployed and divided that by the labor force, and then multiplied that by 100. So that's how we came up with that 6.2%. And if you scroll down, it just gives you a breakdown based off of it's based off of gender, race, and age. So you can look through here, and it's not as the visual is not as good, but the information that's in here is very good and useful. So the next thing we can look at is the PDF. So this one is just like that HTML site, but it looks a lot better as far as the visual. It gives the same information. It just looks, it's a little bit more pleasing to the eyes, and you can see certain things. The font is bold, so it kind of gives you a better view of things. So temporary layoffs fell by 517,000 in February to 2.2 million. You see our labor force participation rate remained at 61.4%. And again, that number was calculated by taking the total labor force, dividing that by the adult population, and then multiplying that by 100. And that we came up with 61.4%. And it's just it's a 41-page document, but it also breaks it down a little bit more based off of, you see the non-farm jobs. It breaks it down by the jobs. You see retail, trade. It just breaks it down a lot more than that HTML, and it looks a lot better. And then the third employment situation, you can see, you can get a visual chart. And unemployed 27 weeks or longer as a percent. So this is our total civilian unemployment rate. You see it has very large dips. So it's going from 4% over 14% over this time span. And the reason why we have this big jump, if you recall, that's 2020. That's when the government shut down because of the pandemic. So the unemployment rate shot up, but as you can see over the past year, since we had to shut everything down, you see that the number, it constantly went down. So you can just click on the different groups, and you can see how the different groups compare with the total number, where they sit at. So if you look at the whites, that's the blue. So you see it also shot up, but not as much. We can deselect that. We can go to men 20 years or over, and you see it kind of goes with the total unemployment chart. We can deselect that. We go to the blacks or African Americans. You see their level is a little bit higher than what the total is. And you look at women 20 years and over, and you can see that it's kind of following the same thing. It's a little bit lower though. And look at the Asians, and you can see it's following the same chart. Once we got to April 2020, everyone pretty much shot up as far as the unemployment stats. You can see, and then I can deselect that, and then the 16 to 19 years old, and comparing that with what the unemployment rate was for the U.S., you see they have a much higher one, and I explained why theirs is a little bit higher than everyone else. So this is the BLS.gov site. Again, this site is very useful to look at the employment situation in the U.S., as well as to look at different salaries for different occupations, and to look at the GDP as well. But for this example, we're just using it to look at the unemployment rate. So this chart here, or this figure here, shows the unemployment rate since 1960. You see the red signifies or represents the unemployment rate, and then you have this blue line, which is the natural rate of unemployment. And what the natural rate of unemployment is, that shows how an economy is doing. Even when an economy might be doing well, it's showing that there's always going to be unemployment, regardless of how good or how bad the economy is doing. it's always going to be some unemployment. So this would be the natural rate, this blue line here. And if you look at when the peaks of unemployment, when it goes up and then you see it goes down, some of the ones where it goes up, that's when we've had recessions. So right around here in the 90s, there was a recession in 92, 93, and then you see the unemployment went down. But once we got to 2000, you see that rate go up. We had another recession in the 2000s, and then it went down. And then it went up in 2008 when we had the financial crisis with the banks, so unemployment rate went up. So you see it's going up. But through all that, you see that natural rate of unemployment, which regardless of how good or how bad the economy is doing, again, there's always going to be unemployment. This figure shows the labor force participation rate for men and women since 1990. So if you see the men labor force participation rate is designated on the red line, and then as far as the women, that's the green line. So as you can see in the 1950s, you see that the women participation rate was lower, a lot lower than what the men was. And that's because of the culture in the U.S. Back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, women weren't really in the labor force. They took care of the house, and the men were the ones that went out and worked. So that's why in the 1950s, and then you start seeing it starting to go up, increase a lot more in the 70s, and then it started going up a little bit more in the 90s, and it's right around 60% right here at 2015. The reason is because of our culture started becoming more accepting to having females in the labor force. And also men were also starting to take more of a role in the household as well, for raising their kids and taking care of that family in the household, where sometimes there's women that go out and work while the men take care of things in the house. So as the culture and things like that changed over the years, women started to get more involved in the labor force, and then men started to be more involved in the house. So this table here measures the labor underutilization, and that's what the U stands for. So U1 has persons unemployed 15 weeks or longer. That's 2% rate. The main ones I want to discuss, because I'm not going to read the whole chart to you, you can read that, are the U3 and the U4. So these two rates, well, the one rate, the U rate, is the one that you hear on the news or on the radio stations where they talk about the unemployment rate. This is the official unemployment rate. It's not the one that I agree with, but this is the one that they use on TV to tell you who's unemployed or the unemployment rate. The one that's a little bit more real is the U4 rate, because what that uses is the total unemployed, which also has the discouraged workers or the people that are no longer in the labor market for whatever reason. And they use that as a percentage as well. So this one has the employed, the U4 has the employed, the unemployed, as well as the not in the workforce. So this one's a little bit more real than the U3, because the U3 does not include the discouraged workers, which could be a decent amount of people that are not in the labor force anymore. So a few things to know or to review before we start talking about the two type of unemployments. The first one thing that you need to know, that unemployment never falls to zero. There's always going to be, again, there's always going to be some type of unemployment, regardless of whether the economy's going well or it's not going well. And then unemployment fluctuates around the natural rate. Remember that rate that we discussed, that shows the unemployment rate regardless of how well an economy is doing. Now, there are two different types of unemployment that I wanted to discuss. The first one is frictional unemployment. And this is the type of unemployment that is usually short term, where people leave a job or they quit a job due to personal reasons, where if they may not have liked the company that they work for or the type of work they were doing, or they didn't like the people that they work with. So they decide to quit. Or it can also include people who decide to move to another city, for whether it's for to be with a spouse or to find more opportunities. That's what frictional unemployment is. The other type of unemployment that I wanted to discuss is structural unemployment. And this one's more of a little bit more long term. And structural unemployment comes about when there's a mismatch of qualifications of the workers that are looking for employment versus the types of jobs that are available. So if you go to a state like West Virginia, where they're heavy into mining and coal mining and things like that, the job market might not be very good for coal miners nowadays, because we're starting to move more to renewable energy. So the structural or the types of jobs that are available for people who want to work might not be there. Now, the last thing I'm going to discuss about unemployment is the insurance that's available to people who become unemployment due to no fault of their own. They may have been laid off, or the business may have been shut down. Now, this unemployment insurance is a governmental program, and it doesn't cover all of the workers' income. It covers around 50% of the workers' wages for 26 weeks. Now, the thing for people to get the unemployment benefits or unemployment insurance, they have to be looking for work. So they can't just be sitting at home trying to collect a check. They have to be actively looking for a job, and they have to be able to prove that they're looking for a job. So the good thing about the unemployment insurance is it helps reduce hardship that's due to unemployment. Again, it doesn't cover the wages, the full amount of the wages, but it does provide some type of income coming into the house for up to 26 weeks. With the pandemic, that kind of changed because they extended unemployment benefits because a lot of things were shut down, so people couldn't get back to work. But usually the unemployment insurance, it's just for 26 weeks, and the person again has to be looking for work. These benefits stop once the person that's giving the benefits, once they find a new job, the unemployment insurance benefits stop, and they're able to get back into the work field and start collecting a paycheck. Now, depending on how well the unemployment insurance is compared to a job that a person may have applied for and may have been accepted to the job, depending on the amount that the job is paying, the person may not want to take the job if it's lower paying, and if they can get money from the unemployment insurance program, they may decide not to take the job. So this, in a nutshell, is what unemployment is. I wanted to discuss that because it's a hot topic. People talk about it. You'll hear about it throughout the day. anytime I'm looking at any of the financial uh, TV shows or looking on a financial website, it's usually some mention about unemployment. So I felt it was kind of important to discuss unemployment and go over it a little bit.